You've been listening to the attorney for the family of Alvin Cole, Kimberly Motley, who is speaking there with reporters. First, we want to apologize for some of the language there. Obviously, emotions are running high. The family members of Alvin Cole just getting this information moments ago from the Milwaukee County District Attorney that the officer, Joseph Mensah, will not be charged in this incident where Alvin Cole died after that shooting outside Mayfair Mall back in February. Again, there is this multiple-page report that was put out by the district attorney's office. It's actually a letter to Chief Weber of the Wauwatosa Police Department, where it is going through step by step the reasons why they came to this decision. Many of them, Steve and I are both reading this right now and going through it as we're talking with you here. A lot of it centers on the fact that Alvin Cole had this 9mm weapon. That he fired it during a foot pursuit with the police officers, as we know, and as they mentioned here. Independent investigators say that Alvin Cole ended up shooting himself during that and not shooting at an officer. That's what the independent investigator says. The Wauwatosa Police Department's position has been all along that a gun was fired at the police officers, and that is why Officer Mensah fired his duty weapon, striking Cole, and of course he later died. So it is focusing on that fact that he had the gun, also looking at several different videos in the area there, from Cheesecake Factory to the Nordstrom. And so, Steve, I know you're reading through this right now. I'm reading through it as well, and we'll continue to watch what happens there at the courthouse.
Yeah, Tom, we'll keep an eye on this live picture from outside the public safety building while you and I go through this. A lot of things were said by Alvin Cole's family and his attorney here in the past 10 minutes or so. Some of them colorful, some of them they put forward as facts, and we just need to work through some of those things. It is correct that in this 14-page letter, the DA, John Chisholm, says nothing about the justification of this shooting. That was not the DA's job here in this case. The DA was not to determine whether the shooting was justifiable or not. The DA looks at the evidence to determine whether there is sufficient evidence that Officer Mensah had the belief that deadly force was necessary. And he could not determine other than that. After looking at the totality of evidence, the DA, John Chisholm, could not determine that Officer Mensah did not need to use self-defense here in this moment. What we do know is that Alvin Cole was in possession, according to the DA, and that independent report we saw earlier in the day, of a firearm, a 9mm pistol that was reported stolen in December. He brought that pistol inside Mayfair Mall, where there was an altercation with some other individuals. Security and police were called, and Alvin Cole then started to run across the parking lot. As he's running across the parking lot near the Cheesecake Factory, according to the police reports we have, Alvin Cole removed the firearm from a shoulder bag, a fanny pack type bag. While he was removing that gun, either accidentally or on purpose, a shot was fired from that gun. As police are pursuing Alvin Cole through the parking lot, they hear a gunshot come from Alvin Cole's gun. That gun was not pointed at police at the time, but in the dark of the parking lot, we don't know what anybody saw. We do know that bullet, though, hit Alvin Cole in the arm. Alvin Cole at that point drops to the ground. At this point, we actually have some video and other things we're going to need to go through to stitch together a better picture of what happened here. But according to DA Chisholm's report and the independent investigator's report we saw earlier today, there were multiple commands shouted by officers at Alvin Cole to get rid of the gun in one way or the other. Alvin Cole, according to the officers on the scene, 3 different officers are quoted in this 14-page report from the district attorney. 3 different officers, not just Officer Mensah. 3 officers testified that Cole pointed the gun in their direction. And then Officer Mensah fires 5 times, and Alvin Cole is shot dead there in the parking lot outside the Cheesecake Factory at Mayfair Mall. So those are some of the facts as we know them from the various reports we have seen today. We heard 2 different things discussed here with this group of Alvin Cole's family and his supporters outside the public safety building. The first was released around the lunch hour. That was the report of an independent investigator Carol Meekin's joining me now for our live coverage here. That independent investigator, Carol, was former U.S. Attorney Biskupik, who looked at this case to see if Officer Mensah was okay to return to work, was one of the big things he had determined there. And he determined that Officer Mensah was not fit for duty after this, his third fatal on-duty shooting. And then the second,
the third one in 5 years, and that's something that the family is very upset over. They want some answers as to what has transpired today. We have reporters all over this story, and we are following it from all angles. Our Lauren Lender is live outside the Milwaukee County Safety Building, where it has been a very emotional afternoon, and people really have gathered. We've got the National Guard there, and a lot of people really say this has been something that they have been waiting for months. Can you tell us what the scene is like right now, Lauren?
Well, Carol Earl, right now, the family and their attorney is actually still answering some questions during this time. So it is actually pretty quiet outside the public safety building. But right before we learned the decision and we saw some movement inside the public safety building, it was getting very intense out here. And there was a pretty rowdy scene with people trying to get inside the building. Finally, though, the people moved back. The family finally came out and they were able to address the media about this decision. And what Alvin Cole's mom, Tracy, says is that DA Chisholm did not justify her son's death. I think that she thinks that that's the most important thing to get across here, is that he did not justify her son's death. The family, there is, though, kind of an emotional scene out here as we've been waiting months for this decision and have learned more about the officer involved in this shooting. Officer Joseph Mensah, as we said, who has been involved in 3 fatal shootings in the past 5 years. The family and the attorney and the public were all hoping that the district attorney would take all of that into consideration in his decision. Obviously, his decision ended up coming out to say that he will not charge Officer Joseph Mensah. The family, in talking to the media and addressing their supporters out here, said that the fight continues. It doesn't end here, and they did make sure to address that independent investigators' findings for the Wauwatosa Police and Fire Commission in terms of Officer Mensah's job status. The fact that that investigator ruled that Officer Mensah should be terminated from the department because of an extraordinary risk of a potential 4th fatal shooting. And they also did make sure to mention, as Steve was talking about, the situation regarding a gun. Police have been saying time and again that Alvin Cole had shot at Officer Mensah, fired a shot as he was being chased by police and ran away from them. But in this independent, in this report from that independent investigator, they say that Cole didn't fire a gun at Officer Mensah and instead shot himself in the arm as he ran away from officers. The family and their attorney really wanted to mention that point here and feel that that was should have been considered by the DA in his decision making. Of course, we're still sifting through the whole reasoning behind the DA's decision, but right now that's what we are hearing from the family, and they do say that they're going to continue fighting to get justice, not just for Alvin Cole, but for other young black men who have been in similar situations with police. We'll continue to monitor the situation out here. Right now, all remains peaceful, with people chanting and a little bit and obviously upset about this decision. But for now, we'll send it back to you, Carol and Steve.
Lauren, thank you very much. You know, a lot of people still concerned, especially the family, over that independent decision and the results that they found out through that panel. So right now we're going to go to Stephanie Haynes. She is outside the police building, administration building, I believe. And Stephanie, what can you tell us from that vantage point?
Carol, quite a different scene from where Lauren's at right now. She's in Milwaukee. We are in Wauwatosa outside the police building. It's very quiet here, save for some traffic going by on the road. I do want to point out the fencing that is surrounding the perimeter of the police department. Very tall fencing. It's locked up. It's sort of what you saw in Kenosha, just to keep crowds away from the building. to have that perimeter up around it. Otherwise, it's very, very quiet here. It's a normal day in the neighborhood, it seems. I see quite a lot of people walking around, walking their dogs. There's normal traffic. Otherwise, out here, there's just me and a few other reporters. We're going to keep an eye on it here because a curfew has been implemented in Wauwatosa. That's in less than 2 hours. It starts at 7 p.m. And so we'll see if people abide by that curfew or if there's any sort of activity that picks up around here in Wauwatosa. But Carol, for now, I'll send it back to you.
Stephanie, we should point out that there has been a lot of criticism from some of the businesses in that area about putting up that fencing in anticipation of something that had not yet happened. And a lot of people actually signed a letter complaining about that decision. But as you see, the fencing is there. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
And before we move on to Tony Atkins here, we just got an email from the Wauwatosa Police Department. I want to share a bit of that with you. This references the report that was released earlier today by the independent investigator. Chief Weber in Wauwatosa says the Fire and Police Commission was provided with the independent investigator's report regarding the proceedings involving Officer Joseph Mensah. Chief Weber and his command staff will review this report. However, they have no other comment on this matter at that time. Again, that's the report from the independent investigator saying that Joseph Mensah should be terminated. Let's get live back out to Tony Atkins. He's at Mayfair Mall. There's a significant law enforcement and National Guard presence at the mall tonight to protect the businesses there. Tony, tell us more.
That's right, Steve. As Stephanie mentioned just a few moments ago, that curfew, the sun's beginning to set in. Right now, some businesses are starting to take precautions and protect what they may have. Just a few moments ago, as we waited and as we heard from the family of Alvin Cole, we noticed that folks over at that Barnes & Noble began boarding up. Some other Mayfair businesses have begun boarding up as well. But right now, we just a few minutes ago, we saw the Barnes & Nobles being boarded up. Now, in my last hit around 4:30, one thing I did show you was as the barricades were being set up at the entrance point to Mayfair Mall here along Mayfair Road, we saw the barricades being placed down. Now you can see those Humvees. The National Guard presence continues to grow. Again, this is Mayfair Road near the mall. This is where the shooting happened, the epicenter of everything that from that incident on February 2nd. Now, we are still out here monitoring the situation. We haven't seen any protesters out here yet, but we're going to stay out here to keep an eye on things here at Mayfair where the shooting happened back in February in case there is any protest or any events that happen here throughout the evening as this curfew is implemented at 7 o'clock tonight. For now, reporting live in Wauwatosa along Mayfair Road, Tony Atkins, TMJ4 News.